She fought for years to be free of the man who sexually abused her children, their own father and her husband. They were toddlers when their parents' relationship broke down.
He became mentally and physically abusive towards me. It came to a head. One day, I asked him to leave.
It was only years later that the children disclosed their father was sexually abusing them. He was eventually convicted of multiple counts of sexual abuse against his own children.
At the time, it was a relief. I thought we could start a new life.
And when did you find out that that wasn't going to be the case?
Shortly after his sentencing and he went off to prison, I was contacted by my solicitor to say that he was applying from prison to ask for any form of contact with his children, whether that be photographs, school reports, information on their health, all these things that parental responsibility entitles a parent to.
Remarkably, a parent convicted of sexual abuse against their own child is not automatically barred from having direct contact with them.
I changed my name back to my maiden name, and they wanted to change their name back too, but I wasn't able to do that without his agreement. They had to keep his surname despite what he'd done to them. It's astonishing, isn't it?
When you found that out, what did you feel?
Shocking, disgusted. I lost the respect for the law. I thought, really? The law isn't protecting these children.
For a decade, Lucy's ex-husband repeatedly dragged her to the family court to try and get access to their children, before the court finally granted a barring order. But the damage had already been done. Lucy's daughter says his repeated attempts to contact her through court and even on Facebook drove her to a dark place. She suffered from depression and anxiety and felt the family court didn't listen to her.
During the court process, what kind of questions did you get asked?
Whether I wanted to see him, they could arrange a meeting with him if we wanted to.
Did you feel like you were listened to in the whole process of going repeatedly having to go back to court?
No, I didn't really understand the process. I was thinking to myself, why are they trying to make me do something that I really don't want to do?
Now the Victims Commissioner for London is determined to end the trauma suffered by Lucy's daughter and many other victims of child abuse.
We unfortunately hear from a number of families who've gone through that process where there's been a conviction and then they've had to, often the protective parent, often the mother, has had to spend their life savings, thousands and thousands of pounds, going to the family court to try and protect their children from the convicted father who's in prison.
A new law known as Jade's Law will remove the parental rights of a mother or father found guilty of murdering the other parent. Claire Waxman wants it to apply to parents who sexually abuse their children too.
What we're looking at specifically for this Victims and Prisoners Bill is what I call the bare minimum. It's calling on government to safeguard the children that you absolutely know are at risk because there's been a conviction of child sex abuse by that parent, often the father in the family. We should not be allowing them to continue to have parental responsibility because that poses such a risk and emotional harm as well to the child and the protective parent.
Chris Tuck is a survivor of child sexual abuse by someone outside her family. She's waived her right to anonymity to campaign for changes that protect children.
So for me, it's all about the power and control dynamic. The offending parent has that power and control, and if it's not taken away from them, they will want to exert it at every opportunity. Those children, young people, deserve to recover, and they're only going to do that if that offender is taken out of their lives for good. They can't go on to heal if they've got this puppeteering going on where the offending parent who's been convicted can have a say over their lives on a day-to-day basis. It just doesn't work.
Campaigners say the law is failing to protect children from abusive parents, leaving them to question if the state is prioritising the rights of men over those of their family.
Cathy Newman reporting there. Well, joining me now is the barrister Dr. Charlotte Proudman, who frequently works in the family courts. Thanks very much for coming in. I mean, campaigners are calling this a national scandal. On any reading, it seems madness.
I have to say I agree, and I think most people in society are generally shocked when they learn that parents who've been convicted of sexually abusing their own children, even potentially other children, still retain parental responsibility for their child.
I mean, so exactly that, on that specific point, under the current law, there is no automatic ban on a parent with parental responsibility who's been convicted of abusing their own child. There is no automatic ban on them being allowed to contact that child, to have contact with that child. How can we have ended up here?
There is no automatic ban, no. So that parent does not lose their parental responsibility as soon as they're convicted. How have we ended up there? Well, I think that family courts, and when it comes to seeking justice and change and transformation, is at a glacial pace, and we've known about this being a significant issue for years. Mothers in particular have spoken out about how they spent hundreds of thousands of pounds trying to keep their children safe from fathers who've been convicted of sex offences, and yet unfortunately it seems as if the government are not listening. They're not doing enough to change this, to keep children safe.
Well, there is this amendment. Tell me how you think it will work.
Well, I think that this amendment is positive because, as I say, in a case where a father, for example, is convicted of sexually abusing his own child, his parental responsibility could be suspended. Now, suspended does not mean terminated. So what that could result in is more family court proceedings after they've been convicted, again spending huge amounts of money, taxpayers' money as well, on the court case, and of course it's going to cause a huge amount of emotional distress as well.
So if it's only suspended,
yes,
that parent, whether it be the father or the mother, can still fight the other parent in court?
Yes, and I suspect that's exactly what will happen. We're talking about months, even years of legal proceedings in the family courts, and no guarantee that at the end of that their parental responsibility will be terminated. And what about the parents, particularly fathers, not exclusively of course, who sexually abuse other children? What about them? Why is it that they still retain parental responsibility for their own child? They're considered a risk to all children. They're on the sex offenders register, but they're potentially able to care and have contact for their own child.
So do you think this amendment, this change, should go further then?
Oh, absolutely. I think that parents who are convicted of any child sex offences towards any child, whether their own or others, I think they should automatically lose their parental responsibility, full stop. Not that it's suspended, but that it's terminated.
And I mean, that, I suppose, is a really difficult argument, but the question of rehabilitation, the question of...
There's always an opportunity to go back to the family court, always that opportunity. So if there is rehabilitation, I believe in restorative justice where it can work, then yes, they could return back to the family court, but the onus should not be on the victim parent.
And I mean, you've touched on this already. I mean, the fact you say it's been going on for years, I think people listening today may never have heard of it before. Is that a consequence of the much criticised secrecy of the family courts? And is anything going to change on that?
I couldn't agree more. So many people are not aware of the fact that the family courts operate largely in secrecy. So what happens in the family court stays in the family court. They're slowly starting to open up with transparency orders that are being rolled out in many courts across the country. But there's a real reluctance, I think, for journalists to spend time, of course, money as well, to go into the family courts to seek a transparency order, which means they'd have the right to report. There's no guarantee, of course, that they'll get it, even after spending hours of time.
I mean, how likely is that to change, and how would that come about, any change?
I mean, I think that all family courts should be opened up to the media. They should be able to report on anything, providing that those individuals, the children, the parents and any others concerned, retain their anonymity. How likely do I think it is that's going to happen? I'm afraid not. I think that the change in the family court has been so slow in the last 10 years. Where I've been practising, I've seen many children, sadly, at risk or suffering significant harm as a result of decisions made in the family justice system.
Charlotte Proudman, thank you very much for coming in. Thank you.